Linda, looks like everybody's in.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first Lunch and Learn webinar of the new year, 2025. This, for those of you that have not attended one in the past, is an advocacy series that we began in the fall of last year. And I think it's about the fifth or sixth webinar in the series. So as a few more people come into the room, I think I'll do a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, everyone, welcome. This is a 30-minute webinar, and it is specifically about the power of advocacy and why your voice matters, which is especially appropriate given the new year and all the political changes, starting with the 119th Congress just being sworn in, and then also in many instances, changes at the state and local level. So there's a lot of change, but with that change, there's also a lot of opportunity. And that's the lens that I want to use when talking today to all of us. This is a 30-minute webinar. And so I just wanted to stress that we will be focusing on a few topics, not the whole broad advocacy, because that would be a lot longer. After the webinar, all attendees will receive a link to the recording as well as the PowerPoint slides that we're about to go through. So knowing that may affect what you want to take notes on or how you want to take notes, etc. Anyway, before we dig in, I should, I guess, introduce myself for those of you that don't know. My name is Linda Adams. I am the Senior Director of Advocacy and Strategic Communications here at the National Head Start Association. I'm happy to be here with all of you. Okay, so in this webinar, we will talk about one, what is Head Start advocacy and who we are advocating to, as well as why. And then secondly, we'll talk about why your voice matters. And we'll talk also about some ideas on how you can be a Head Start superstar advocate in 2025. This will include some 1-minute steps that you can take right now during the webinar if you have your phone nearby. All right, so let's go. What is Head Start advocacy? So it consists of a few things, generally speaking. One, actively and publicly supporting Head Start and early Head Start. And that can take many forms. It can be something as bold as, talking to a group of people, either virtually as we're doing now, or in a town hall or whatever. It can also be talking one-on-one like this illustration shows to people who ask questions or people who you think might be either potential advocates or potential beneficiaries, potential families for us now or in the future, or anything in between. Secondly, it's sharing stories, including data and research, as well as solutions to secure support from policymakers in the community as a whole. Ideally, every staff member, parent, and alum should be a Head Start advocate at some level. And the important thing here, and especially for today's webinar, is everyone's voice is crucial in creating and bringing awareness to the impact that Head Start creates. So who are we advocating to? We should go to the next slide. Thank you. First, primary audience is very important for obvious reasons. It's politicians, other policy decision makers, and people who influence them. As you know, Head Start funding is largely from the United States Congress, which consists of the Senate and the House of Representatives. So we are largely dependent on getting support from those members of Congress. Secondly, we are advocating to the public. They help shape the public conversation and are Congress's constituents. And actually, as part of the public, I kind of want to double back on the first bullet point where I talked about people who influence the decision makers, because oftentimes those influencers, which sometimes I call them whisperers, because they have the ear of the decision makers, sometimes they are members of the public and they aren't necessarily people who are officially recognized as staff members, or they don't have an official title with the member of Congress's office. So for example, it could be a family member. It could be someone who cuts the Congress member's hair. It could be someone who goes to church with that Congress member. It could be a golf caddy. I think, for example, with President-elect Trump, his golf caddy wound up being a trusted member of his entourage or whatever, and ultimately wound up having influence with him. And that sort of influence is important to acknowledge, and it's something that we really want to tap into this year. It's maybe not the traditional route, and obviously targeting and cultivating relationships and cultivating our advocacy to politicians and other decision makers is really important directly, but we also want to acknowledge and try to leverage the whisperers or influencers around them, because they can have a really big impact. And then thirdly, the media, the traditional media plays an important role, as does social media. In this webinar, we're not really going to talk about traditional media, meaning like the TV networks or the traditional newspapers, et cetera. But we will be talking quite a bit about social media and how we can leverage that. But our goal in terms of advocacy is to really build a network of champions for Head Start. So how do we do that? And is important in this changing world that we're living in. Let's see. Why advocacy matters today. Okay, this may be obvious, but I figured we should go through it a little bit because it is really important. There are three main reasons. One, it educates the decision makers about the work we do and the importance of Head Start programs. There are a lot of new members of Congress, and I think leaders at the state and local level, who will be coming into office this year. So we should assume that they don't necessarily know very much, if anything, about Head Start. I think, there's no harm in making sure they feel comfortable asking questions about Head Start when we are asked, and also providing them with information proactively. Additionally, we actually have a lot of new staff members within the Head Start workforce. So having an ability to talk about Head Start and the importance and the work that we do. For example, I'm relatively new to the National Head Start Association. I started here 9 months ago. Before that, I did work at a nonprofit in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, New York City, which had 6 Head Start and early Head Start programs. But what I found is that a lot of people who think they know Head Start don't necessarily know, for example, that Head Start provides wraparound programs that deal with healthcare and nutrition and help parents get ahead economically, either by helping them get their GED or find work or whatever. A lot of people don't know that. And obviously we know that parent involvement is very important. So we project is going to be a very important aspect of our advocacy work in 2025, maybe even more so than in previous years. Secondly, advocacy matters because it helps ensure that we have sustained funding and resources for the children and the families that we serve. Last year, the work that all of you did to get parent signatures on the letter to the DC and to the Biden administration on the NPRM and the final rule had an impact on the final rule. The politicians in Washington, DC did hear us. So the advocacy that was done, and it was a lot of work and a lot of resources, did resonate. And that continued advocacy is really essential for making sure that Head Start remains top of mind for members of Congress. And then thirdly, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we do want to build a network of champions for Head Start, a bigger network of champions for Head Start. And that'll be a large part of what we're talking about here today. How to go about doing that, what exactly we want from the people in this network, et cetera. So the power of your voice. So you may be saying to yourself, I'm one person, how much does my voice matter? I've got a lot to do, and all Head Start staff have a lot to do. The fact that you've made time to attend this webinar is not lost on us, and we really appreciate it. But this is something that virtually every member of the Head Start community is struggling with or trying to resolve. How do I find the time? How can I make a difference? Can I make a real difference? This is just a question that often comes up. The reality is that policymakers value the stories from their constituents. I mean, after all, their constituents are the people that vote them in and out of office, right? And for us, that means they especially value the voice and the stories from Head Start staff and parents. Your voice brings the research and the data to life. It's not to say that those data points and those numbers are not important. They are very, very important. But, when you think about policymakers or people in general, they get hit. We all get hit with a lot of numbers and a lot of facts from a lot of different sources, especially nowadays. I mean, even as you're on this webinar, your phone is probably pinging and, people may be coming into your office or whatever. There's always something else that we have to deal with. There's always a lot coming in. So hearing from a person, especially from the first person perspective, is really, it breaks through the noise. It makes a difference. It's heard differently. We've seen that time and time again. For those of you that have gone to one of our leadership institutes and gone on the Capitol Hill visits, or even at the state or local level, if you've talked to some of the politicians, you've probably seen that. Like, the decision makers care and they really value your perspective. It brings the data points to life. So it's important that that be not just acknowledged, but really held to a high level of esteem, because it is one of the highest things we have to offer in terms of advocacy. Your voice, your experience, how you've seen Head Start impact. Collective action is also really important along with that. We're right now on a webinar, and so many of us are in our own office or in our own desk sharing this. So it may feel at times that we are acting alone, but we are not acting alone, obviously. And in the case of advocacy, there are 250,000 staff members throughout the country. And then we've got 700,000 families. And that's just current families. So one of the things we have to really focus on is making sure that the team effort of our advocacy work is felt. And that's something we're going to do a lot in 2025, and leveraging virtual and specifically social media to really help push that to a new level than, say, in previous years. Word of mouth can spark a movement and propel our message to larger audiences. So how do we do that is something that, we'll have to work on, and something that we'll really have to prioritize. Let's see. Overcoming challenges. Okay, so this sort of goes back to, some of the things that prevent people from maybe not wanting to use their voice, not wanting to speak up, or not. It's interesting because, having visited a number of programs, I've seen a couple of themes. And these are things that we've talked about at National Head Start as well. First and foremost, there's too much to do and not enough time. We all know that. So one of the things we're trying to carve out this year in terms of our strategy is finding smaller actions and creating campaigns that consist of smaller actions, like an email or a social media post. Those things can make a difference, especially since times have changed a lot. Too long didn't read, TLDR, has become, a mantra for a lot of people, especially in certain demographics. But having the ability to communicate in smaller bite-sized messages is really important, not just for the people that is responsible for executing those tasks or executing those communications, like our advocacy network, but also for the people that we're trying to reach. Feeling intimidated is another thing we've heard a lot about. Sometimes, and intimidation might not actually be the right word. Sometimes we take for granted that the impact that we are seeing with our families that Head Start is responsible for in terms of contributing to is important and different and is a real achievement, and I think that's because in certain cases, the things we do are relatively commonplace. So within Head Start, but they're not commonplace outside of Head Start. So for example, helping parents with childcare in sense, like we offer a lot of services, but one of them is helping families and meeting them where they are. In many cases, especially if it's a family that is new to parenthood, helping them with that journey, giving them parenting resources, helping them figure out ways that they can maybe enter the workforce, re-enter the workforce, get training to enter it at a higher level. These are, it's interesting because at a lot of nonprofits, when they say they help parents enter the workforce, it's giving maybe the parent a list of phone numbers or go to a bulletin board and see this list and figure it out, and I'm not knocking that, but what Head Start does is a lot more than that. And we know that. So being able to talk about these things with perspective and context of what happens in society in general is really important, and not being humble about it. And in Head Start, I think a lot of times we are really humble. And while that's a nice attribute in many ways, for advocacy, we need to maybe put on our bragging shoes and be more out and about what we do and upfront about it, because it is something that is memorable and differentiates our program. And then if you're not sure what to say, stick to facts and stories, especially if you're new to advocacy. We've all got enough on our plate. So figuring out what you want to say and, having a conversation rather than just talking might also be another tool. All right. So let's see. Why Head Start staff are key advocates. Okay. 3 things. 1, direct impact. As staff members, you see and hear daily the transformations that children and families get. It's, again, we can report those, and we do report those in statistics to a certain extent, but there's something really different about how a photo and an anecdote resonates to politicians, to policymakers, and to the public. Keep in mind the politicians usually get a lot of, data and a lot of reports and stuff like that. So hearing firsthand from Head Start staff what the impact is, cuts through, and actually is often retained in ways that we may not even be aware of down the line. Credibility. Your stories bring authenticity and emotion to the work that we do, and that resonates, and that makes a huge impact, not just on our families, who are often, usually very grateful for how we've helped them, but also for the politicians. Our staff, I say this to many people that don't work at NHSA or in Head Start, but it is incredibly humbling as someone who is new to the Head Start family to hear our staff and talk about their dedication to families and the sacrifices they make to make sure that our families have the ability to get a head start in life. And that starts with the education, but it also includes the family as a whole and how that impact resonates not just through the child, not just through the parents, but often generationally. And you guys can speak to that. So, and you're credible, not that other people aren't credible, but, you clearly have credibility, and it makes a difference. And then the third thing about why Head Start staff are key advocates is your connections with parents and communities help us amplify our voice. So by that, I mean, you have a lot of credibility with parents. So if you suggest to a parent that they take an action, sign a petition, um, you know, uh, join the advocacy network, sign the birthday card, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And if you just say the importance of that, it will resonate, and that parent will be a lot more likely to actually follow through because they know how much they know you. You're a part of their family in a large sense. So your access in your position in the Head Start community is really important to our advocacy. Let's see. Advocacy in action, your role. So there are three things I wanted to focus on in this webinar. One is sharing stories on social media and with NHSA. It, and let me say, not every program has a social media platform like a Facebook page. Many of our programs do have them, but I need to fully recognize that having a social media page is not nothing. It does require spending time creating content and telling stories and figuring out what you want to say. So for those of you that have it, that's great. It probably helps you in many ways, including recruiting staff and families, as well as helping advocacy. And I wanted to just put in a plug for the advocacy end of that, because it is a really important tool. Politicians do care about, their mentions in the press and in their mentions in social media. And even if a politician isn't looking at your Facebook page, they may talk to somebody who is. So it is really helpful by tagging NHSA, and we're going to get to this in another slide. I will provide the handles for all of our social media accounts, but by tagging NHSA in your stories, you are allowing us to amplify the story. It ensures that we will see it. And it also allows us to potentially use that story and amplify it and share it with other people who may be interested in a certain aspect of it. The second part of your role, just generally speaking, is engaging families. And this goes back to encouraging them to share their stories and sign petitions. And, whenever we have a call to action, your ability to share your ability to help leverage your relationships with families so that they can help us make sure that Head Start continues to have a strong future. It's hugely important. Numbers matter when it comes to advocacy. So having a strong network with a lot of people is really vital, especially going into 2025. And then finally, building relationships. So if you have the time and if you're the type of person who likes to do it, and it can be fun, if, attending local events, writing letters, inviting elected officials to site visits. Site visits, as I'm sure many of you know, are really, really impactful. We're about to see in a few slides a couple of examples of how, oh, there we go, thank you. Examples of how these impress and really help sway Congress. And I'm specifically focusing on Congress with these examples, but it works for all politicians of all levels. So with this example you see on screen, this is a post that Congressman Juan Ciscomani, who is from Arizona, and he is a Republican. He wrote this about a year ago after visiting a Head Start program in Arizona in his district. And when you read it, you can see he gets it. He understands. He spoke to teachers and he spoke to moms and he spoke to students and he listens to their stories. And it looks like he's reading a book actually in this photo. So huge. Not only is that an opportunity for him to show his constituents that he cares about Head Start and early childhood, but it's an opportunity that he can show his colleagues in Congress that he believes this is important too. And it's putting his, credibility, and he's basically, part of his brand is I support Head Start. And that's important as we build out advocacy and as we continue to ask Congress to fund us adequately. Let's go to the next slide, which is an example from another congressperson. This is Rosa DeLauro. She is a congressperson from Connecticut, and she is a Democrat. And as you'll see from this post on her Facebook page, aside from her Olympic style form on the playground slide, which, and she's very enthusiastically taking it on, and the support she's getting from the Head Start students alongside her and behind her, when you read the post, you'll see that she wrote acknowledging that it's Head Start Awareness Month. She wrote this a few months ago, as you can see. And she talks about Head Start's history a little bit. And she talks about Project 2025, if it were to happen, how it would affect Head Start. And then she also mentions that she is the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee in Congress. And I will always fight to continue this vital program. So that's really important too. It sends a message to her constituents and to her colleagues in Congress that this matters to her. So let's go to the next slide. I'm conscious of time here. All right, so the calls to action. These are 1 minutes. If you have your phone out, I would encourage you to maybe take it out, or if you wait till you get the PowerPoint or the recording, you can do it then. But it is the 60th birthday year of Head Start. And this is a QR code on screen to a digital birthday card that we are asking everyone who supports Head Start to sign. That includes current and past staff and parents, alums, and friends and fans of Head Start. Even if they've never had any direct contact with Head Start as a family, they can sign this. And you don't have to write a message. You can literally just sign your name. But if you want to write a message, it will get to administration and to Congress when we send it later this year. And you should look for an announcement later this year for a social media campaign. We are planning to bring visibility to the birthday card campaign and to encourage word of mouth so we can get a lot of signatures. So that will take literally 1 minute. It's just literally logging on or not even logging on, scanning the code and typing your name. And you might have to scan to a little bit on your phone to get to the card, but it's there. The second 1 minute action, and snap a photo of the next slide and share it with parents and alums and other staff who are not on this call. And again, we will be sending this out. But if you keep this card or this slide on your phone, this is a great opportunity to have something in hand when you are talking to a parent or you run into someone on the street and they mention that they like Head Start. Maybe they know you work there or they found out that you work there for the first time. This actually happened to me fairly recently. And they said, oh, I love Head Start. And I whipped out my phone and I said, oh, we would love to get your support. Can I share these with you so you could, they're different things. There are different ways that you can support. And it has QR codes to the Advocacy Network, the 60th birthday card, and Share Your Head Start. I'm noticing the formatting of this page is not what it should be. We'll probably make this a PDF when we send this to you. So sorry about that. But this is or JPEG, because it's whatever, we'll convert it, we'll fix it. But this is a great way to quickly, without having to scramble and say, oh, what do I do? This is a moment where I can get someone engaged and help build out the advocacy network. You can actually just whip out your phone and share the screenshot in your photo album and do a lot of help in building out our advocacy network. And then third, and this is more of a review. The third call to action is about making sure that your program or association follows NHSA on social media. Why this matters: NHA social channels, especially our Facebook page, are an easy way to see our public advocacy messages and to share them with your program's social media networks. And what I mean by that is during, for example, Head Start Awareness Month last year, we saw that a number of programs preferred to share our posts for Head Start Awareness Month by clicking the share button on the NHSA Facebook page, as opposed to going to our social media toolkit, downloading or sharing it from there, or downloading and uploading. I don't know, different people have different ways of doing it. So also, because social media networks require us to be brief, if you're looking for a concise way to sum things up, it's often good to see what we post on Facebook. It might be helpful to you if you're looking for that. And I also just wanted to mention finally that liking or commenting on a post on NHSA's site, or on anyone's site for that matter, helps that post reach more people. If you're on social media a lot, you probably heard content creators say, like this channel or like this post, it helps the algorithm. And that's really true. The social media outlets, whether they're Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, whatever, they have to gauge how to put your posts in other people's news feed. So basically, when you log on to Facebook, for example, you may say, well, who determines what posts show up first on my feed? And that is one really important determinant. If they see a post is getting a lot of likes, they will put it higher up in someone's newsfeed. Generally speaking, there are other things they look at as well, but the algorithm does look at engagement, which consists of liking and commenting on posts. So if you like a post, feel free to actually click the like button, or if you want to comment, feel free to comment. It does really help. All right, so I don't know if we have any other slides. All right, so that is the end of the webinar. It was a sort of nugget of some advocacy ideas on how your voice makes a difference. I want to thank all of you for attending. Again, my name is Linda Adams. My email address is at the bottom, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And I put this Maya Angelou quote on because I really like it, and I think it really it is relevant to what we are discussing here, which is people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that's something that resonates not just for advocacy, but for Head Start as a whole. I think that's what we do so well with our families, and I'm proud to be a part of it. So thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a good week.